Imagine being accused of a crime that no one could prove existed. No evidence, no witness you could trust, no way to defend yourself, only rumours and fear, with only the word of terrified children as evidence. Now imagine your neighbours believing it, your church believe it, and even your government believing it. Imagine being dragged into court because someone claimed you caused a storm, or made their cows sick, or appeared in a dream beside the devil, and then imagine being tortured until you confessed to a crime you couldn't possibly have committed. This was the reality for thousands of people across Europe. And while most people know about the Salem witch trials, Salem was only a tiny part of a much larger nightmare, because for nearly 300 years, Europe descended into mass hysteria. Entire towns became obsessed with the idea that Satan was hiding amongst them and corrupting the minds of ordinary people. Children accused parents, friends betrayed friends, and in some places, almost every woman in a village was suspected of witchcraft. So tonight, we're exploring the witch trials history forgot, the strange, terrifying, and brutally violent cases that spread amongst Europe long before Salem ever happened. If you're new here, I am Sad Knitting. I love to talk about things that are creepy, spooky. I also love to knit, hence the name. So sometimes I'll do like creepy subjects that have something to do with knitting, but not always. Sometimes it is just the creepy and spooky. Like today, it's witchcraft. So if you love that if that's a bit of you, please subscribe and let's get on with the video. So today we're going to be talking about witches because I love a witch. I am feminist, got power, love it. I am a horror movie fan. I've always grown up loving anything supernatural and creepy and spooky, and witches have always held such a fascination with me. Honestly, if I was a woman, I would be a goth witch, Wiccan. Like, if you've seen Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows, you know who I'm talking about. Like, I would be her. Icon, legend star, game director in the Blair Witch Book of Shadows. But anyway, and also that movie's good. I don't care what anyone says. It's amazing. But yeah, anyway, let's get on with the video. So to understand why witch trials became such a issue in the 1600s, we need to kind of understand what Europe was like as a whole during that time. So the period between 1400 and 1700 is where we saw this widespread hysteria around witches. And this was kind of a very unstable time in European history because you had wars, you had famines, you had religious conflicts, you had political revolutions, you had the works. It was happening everywhere. People lived in a world where science didn't exist yet. So when they experienced things such as like famine or massive storms, there only really could be one reason, and that was women. Witchcraft, sorry, my mistake. Witchcraft. So to start with, let's talk about the kind of religious environment at the time. So Christians always kind of believed in some sort of idea of witchcraft, but it wasn't necessarily always evil. Like, to them, magic wasn't automatically considered evil because their practice had a lot of magical things in it. For example, Mary, Immaculate Conception, that's magic. But over time, their attitudes kind of changed. And by the Middle Ages, witchcraft stopped being viewed as like a harmless pastime and became directly related to like the devil. And suddenly witches weren't just people using magics, they were devil worshippers, they were people who didn't believe in God, they were enemies of God, and they flew through the night and had parties with the devil. But yeah, they believed they caused disease, they caused famine, they caused everything bad, basically. And this idea spread fast. And people believe that one of the main reasons why this kind of hysteria started to spread faster than usual is the invention of the printing press, because before that, you know, ideas were spread, but they were spread very slowly by word of mouth. And with the invention of the printing press, you saw a massive change in how information was spread. And no book spread faster than the Bible. No, sorry, not the Bible. It was a book called, I'm going to butcher this, Malus Maleficarum, Malus Maleficarum, Maleficarum, Malus Maleficarum, Malus Maleficarum, Maleficarum. I got it then. This was published in 1487 by an inquisitor called Heinrich Kramer, and the book basically means the hammer of the witches.
A 1,000-page witch hunting guide. The first part is the theological justification. The middle part is for identifying the witches and identifying and how to break spells. And the third part is taking them to trial. It literally tells all the steps need to be done to convict a witch, and it even has the methods for using torture. This was a very depraved book and very misogynistic because realistically about 95% of the people who were accused of witchcraft were women.
And it was kind of a manuscript on how to hunt witches. And this kind of detailed all of the steps you would go to identify a witch and then prosecute and convict a witch. And this book is so misogynistic, it's insane. Like, this is the kind of stuff you would see on a far right male podcast. Like, some of the shit in this book, it's crazy. But anyway, this book was extremely brutal and pretty much was the reason why everyone went on this big craze. Yeah, the book argued that witches were inherently female because women were supposedly morally weaker and subject and basically easier for Satan to corrupt. Like, that could be inserted into any male podcast and that would fit straight in there. But yeah, it basically described witchcraft as like some organized conspiracy against Christianity, which obviously got people so afraid. And one of the things in the book is that it shows or kind of describes how you'd go about torturing a witch, which I probably have to restrict what I say about the T word because I don't want to get like banned. I was gonna say demonetized and I was like, I ain't even monetized anyway, so. But anyway, I don't want it to get restricted because I worked really hard on this. But yeah, the male, I have to say this again. The Malus Maleficarum basically described witches as having sex with demons and basically partying and just basically having a great time. They said they would attend satanic gatherings, kill children, have cannibalism, and they also caused impotence whilst also destroying crops. And I feel like, okay, how is that a witch's fault that your man can't get up? But okay, of course they'd turn that into a woman's problem. But it basically turned witchcraft into some small superstition to a basically organized enemy. And obviously not everyone kind of was super happy with this book. Like, some church officials did kind of go like, this is a bit much, like, calm down. But obviously a lot of people kind of just ran with it and was like, oh my god, this is an excuse to like be really horrible to women. So it's great. I think this became very influential during the Protestant Reformation. I am really bad with religious history because I don't know anything about religious as a whole, but to kind of give you a brief overview, during the 1500s, the Christianity kind of fractured and was separated into Protestants and Catholics, and they didn't like each other, and they basically were just like spreading shit. They were just spreading rumors about each other, and obviously that's like a very, very, very watered down version, but it's important because during the Reformation, both sides kind of believed in kind of the same things, and they both believed that witches were bad and they were going to get you. And obviously there were so many wars fought over this, I think, and it was just generally not a great time. As well as adding in the kind of fear of witches, it kind of gave them like a enemy they both could hate. And kind of witch hunts were the way where they were like, oh, this was, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, if anything. Religion kind of controlled everything at that point in Europe. Like, religion was really, really big. It was like the moment. And by the late 1500s, Europe was pretty much ready, set, primed for a mass hysteria. Yeah, it just was. It was ready, set, go. They were aching for it, really. And nowhere shows that better than Sweden. So now we're going to be talking about the Swedish witch hunts. And when most people think of witch trials, I don't think anyone would think of Sweden, which is why I wanted to cover it, because it is really interesting. And Sweden actually experienced one of the most terrifying witch trials you could think of. Like, it's crazy. When I was reading this, I was like, God, this should be a film. But anyway, one thing that makes this inherently more scary and terrifying is like it involved a lot of children. A lot of children were kind of the subject of this intense trial, and they kind of just believed them, which is crazy to think. I'll briefly kind of go into a little bit of history on what kind of Sweden kind of believed about witches at the time. So in medieval Sweden, they did already have laws on kind of like sorcery and magic. Sorcery really only carried the death penalty if it could be proven that the magic resulted in a murder, and this was called maleficarum. I feel like I'm in Harry Potter. But yeah, so practicing magic wasn't enough to kind of get executed. It was kind of just, it wasn't enough. You'd kind of get a slap on the hand, maybe a fine or a few nights in the cells, but this all changed in 1608. So Sweden basically introduced a law that was kind of based on a Bible verse, which I don't necessarily feel like we should be introducing laws based off the Bible, but that's just me. And the verse was, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." So they heard that and were like, that's good. And after that, all forms of sorcery equaled death. So that was great. And this kind of period of witch hunts, so it's not just one big witch hunt, it's like a few on and off. And this was known as the Great Unrest, but it's also known as like the Great Noise as well. It's known by lots of different things. But I have to say, the Great Noise and the Great Unrest, that is a fucking banging name for like a witch trial. I'm getting possessed. It all started in 1668. Did I get that right? Yes. So okay, this is just a disclaimer right now. This has a lot of words, Swedish words. I'm not Swedish, as you may know. So if I butcher the names, I do apologize, but I will have a crack at them because it'll make you laugh. But anyway, back to the video. It all began in 1668, where a shepherd girl called Gritard Svendotter, she accused a woman of abducting her in the night. And this girl kind of said that she was abducted by this woman and taken to a place called Blacula, we'll say Blacula, which in Sweden was kind of like a place where witches gathered with Satan. It sounds really cool. I kind of want to go. And according to the story, witches flew through the night to this place and danced with the devil all night. A few children described the same thing and described having massive feasts with the devil, and you know, they were dancing around, and also the demons did abuse them horrifically. But I was going to say, without the abuse things, I think that sounds quite a fun night. At first, people were skeptical, but the more children that came forward and the more kind of similarities in the stories, they were kind of like, we probably shouldn't ignore this. Let's investigate it and see what's going on. And the more they investigated, soon they discovered that dozens and dozens of children had reportedly been abducted by witches. And this is where parents started to panic, and kind of everyone started to panic. And this is where Sweden entered mass hysteria. So following on with that, there was also another set of trials within this kind of bubble of witch crazes in Sweden. These were known as the Mora trials. And one of the first outbreaks happened in about 1668. So a few years after that kind of witch craze. And children, basically, again, children, why we believe in children. And they kind of all said that they were abducted from the beds in the middle of the night and claimed they were forced to renounce God and serve Satan, which I don't necessarily feel like that is that bad. Like, if you think about the other children from the previous bit, they were kind of like abused by demons and were dancing with witches and whatnot, but by the by, they basically told this story, and 17 people were sentenced to death because of this. And what's worse than that is that the children were also punished, and around 148 children who testified in court were sentenced to public punishments. So I think they were whipped, which is kind of crazy because The church, the authorities basically said that, oh, you were involved in these rituals yourself, you must have participated. And yeah, they basically whipped them. But obviously with the more people, the more children that came forward, the more panic spread across villages, and eventually the government kind of lost control because they were like, why is everyone saying witches are everywhere? This is crazy. And like every new accusation of witches inspired more accusations. So it was just a constant barrel roll of testimony to claiming new people, and then people would claim more people, and it was just crazy. It got to the point where nearly every parish in northern Sweden believed that witches were abusing their children. Some of the stuff the children reported is insane. Some children reported that they were carried away by witches on the backs of cattle that were stolen from rich people. So eventually the government formed a kind of a group to investigate these witch trial with these witches. This is called the National Witchcraft Committee, and they organised a hearing on the 13th of August, and over 5 days 60 adults and numerous children were all interrogated. During one of the interrogations, the witches basically confessed to like lots of different things, including using magical implements, worshipping the devil. And when the judges actually was like, okay, show us then, prove that you can do magic, the witches basically were like, oh, we can't do magic anymore. And most of the kind of evidence of this trial wasn't actually written down, because they said that because all of the testimonies were very similar, they didn't think it was like, they didn't think they needed to write anything down, which is just crazy. That's the government. And then the execution comes, and the execution took place on the 24th of August 1669, in which the condemned were decapitated and burnt at the stake. There's a report on the actual execution, and I'll read it now. The sinners walked quickly, except the two last ones, who began to sigh and moan, although not as much as to delay the procession. The stake has been built opposite the church on a sandy peninsula on the opposite side of the river. On the place of execution, the 14 women and the man were decapitated with an axe, and their corpses were lifted up on top of the stakes. First 7 on the first stake, 5 at the second, and 3 at the third. A terrifying spectacle, and burnt. That's grim. But what did this outcome mean? It meant more witch trials. And now we get on to another witch trial in Sweden. This is called the Torseka witch trials. And this happened in 1675. So you can see it's kind of spread out. It's just little pockets of trials. It's not just all in one period. It's just kind of spaced out every few years. And this is where the kind of panic on this period of witch hysteria reached kind of boiling point, with children again witness in the trial. And this is kind of different because it wasn't just the witches that were tortured, it was the children as well, which is again crazy. So at the start of the trial, a priest that was called Homnius, I think his name was, pronunciation, I'm sorry, and he had 2 boys basically walk into the church and point out who was a witch. And apparently the witches had an invisible symbol on their head which they could see, and one of the children walked in and deadass pointed at the priest's wife, and then the wife just absolutely bash in the face on this little kid, which he then went, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, the sun was in my eyes. And nothing happened to her. I'm sorry, but like she got accused as a witch and nothing happened to her. That's privilege. And it's interesting to note as well, this priest was not a very nice man. He actually tortured the children who were kind of testifying to get more information out of them. Apparently he whipped them, and he also bathed them in ice cold water until they kind of until he got the testimony he wanted, which again, that wouldn't stand up in court. However, the trial concluded and it resulted in 71 executions, which that is an insane amount of people. 65 women, 2 men and 4 boys. nearly every fifth woman in the parish was a witch, technically. This whole kind of trial and subsequent execution, all of the evidence of this trial was dubious at best, because apparently the commission who actually investigated the trial, they had no right to kind of conduct executions. They were required to submit names to the High Council to be like, these people are witches, which would then have been confirmed by the High Council before any sentences could be carried out. And this did not happen, which means that like all of these executions were illegal. And this remains the largest witch execution in Swedish history. And this kind of meant that a lot of the commissioners basically started to get very suspicious. And during one trial in Stockholm, which was in 1675, I think, officials basically started to notice inconsistencies and familiar tales of, you know, being abducted by a witch, etc., etc. And they basically started to investigate more and found out that quite a lot of the children were lying. Yeah, the more people confessed, the more the kind of hysteria collapsed on itself, really. They kind of figured out that like, we shouldn't necessarily be taking the word of children. Basically, the same authorities that were kind of encouraging the panic by investigating it were now desperately trying to stop it. And it was too late, because by the time this great unrest or great noise ended, hundreds of people, innocent people, were now dead. So now we're going to talk about some witch trials in Norway, and these are called the Vardø witch trials. Again, apologies for the pronunciation. So if Sweden's witch hunts were more about children, Norway's witch hunts are more driven by like the fear of nature itself, because the town of Vardø sits in the far north of Norway, quite near the Arctic Sea, so you can imagine how bad the weather is. So violent storms could absolutely decimate a fishing community overnight. And during the 1600s, there's three kind of distinct witch trials that happened, and this took place between 1623 and 1663. And basically people were just desperately searching for explanations for all this weather. And of course, what did they do? They blamed women, witches. So in Norway, they believed in something called wind magic, and people believed that witches kind of had the power to control storms using kind of magical knots. And according to the folklore, loosening one knot releases wind, and untying another unleashes storms. And because fishing was very essential to surviving in northern Norway, storms basically terrifies people, because that was their industry, that was how they survived. And when boats sank, witches were to blame. And in December of 1617, there was a massive storm, and they described it as the sea and the sky coming into one, which is pretty dope. And this storm was so bad that it caused the deaths of 40 men, and 10 boats were lost. So 10 boats, 40 men. And in the same year, which I don't necessarily know if they have a connection, but basically the same year, a new law was announced. This was a new law of sorcery and witchcraft, and this was announced in 1620. So with these trials as well, I'm going to kind of focus on a few people to kind of, because it's all well and good being like, oh, we're talking about witch trials, but I think it's interesting to kind of focus on individuals and kind of put a name to the face. Again, I'm probably going to butcher some of these names because I'm a foolhardy Englishman, so please bear with me. So the first person we're going to focus on is a lady called Marie Jongersdatter. I think I did that right. But she was accused of being a witch, and she was interrogated under torture on January the 21st. And under torture, she said that Satan had come to her during Christmas of 1620 and asked him to follow him to a neighbour's house, and the neighbour was called Christy Strondratter, and the devil basically said, hey, do you want to come serve me? And she was like, fuck yeah. And apparently he actually bit her between her fingers and caused something called a witch's brand. And then both her and her neighbour went to a Christmas party No, I know, it's wild. So they went to this Christmas party on the side of a mountain, but both of them kind of had disguises apparently. She apparently threw a fox skin over her friend neighbor, and she turned into a fox. And then they both flew through the air with Satan towards the Sabbath. And it was reported that she saw many people doing the same thing. So she's there flying in the sky with lots of other women, apparently. It was there. She also saw 2 men apparently, which is interesting. And they all kind of transformed into different animals, so cats, dogs. She even said mystical creatures like sea monsters and things like that. And it was there at this Christmas party that Satan was hosting that they kind of danced with the devils. They all kind of celebrated and had drinks, which I think is really nice. I think that might have been a really good night. And which after that they flew back home. However, apparently her friend, neighbor, Christy, she was like, no, it's fine, you go ahead, I'm going to take the long way round and fly home by the sea. Okay. And then Mary, then again, when she was under torture, she confessed that she was responsible for the big storm that I mentioned earlier, and she did it because she had a spat with a neighbor, and when all the men were at sea, she had sex with demons and devils. So there's also another woman who had a similar story in a way, where during the Christmas of 1617, she had, with a group of witches, tied a fishing rope 3 times, spat at it and untied it, after which the sea rose like ashes and people were killed. And she was then arrested because she was seen in the company of dogs and cats. Oh no, she was arrested after she was seen in the company of demons that were shaped like dogs and cats, and was exposed to the ordeal of water, which I think that means she was drowned. And I'm not to like nitpick or anything, but like, if you see someone with dogs and cats, demons that look like dogs and cats, maybe they're just dogs and cats. And many of these women basically confessed these stories after they were kind of tortured. Which we also have another statement from a lady called Anne Losdatter. So she apparently partied so hard that she had barely time to get home in time for Sunday church. I shit you not. Honestly, these parties seem wild. But they all, like all of the women who were tortured during this time, they all pointed to Kirsty as being the kind of leader of this kind of coven, which is kind of badass. But again, very sad. I do really love the idea of all these witches just flying through the sky in Norway going to a party. That is so cool. But 2 other women basically transformed themselves into cats and crawled under a gate to meet 2 other women, and they all flew over the sky. They all flew over the sea to get to this, like, you know, Satan rave or whatever. And they basically broke into someone's basement and got themselves drunk while Satan was like, party on, dude. What I find so funny is in one of these tales or confessions, one of the women says that they got so drunk with Satan that Satan actually had a hard time like getting her up to leave. And the basic people who kind of were interrogating her was like, yeah, that makes total sense. That's why there's no alcohol in your system, because Satan helped you up. What the fuck? This is crazy. I do, however, find it really interesting how pretty much all of these kind of confessions have the kind of same location of going to a devil's kind of party during Christmas time and at the side of a mountain. I feel like someone should investigate that. I'm just saying. I feel like there might be something in that. They also had a few children who had some tales as well. Like one little girl apparently literally visited hell and saw Satan there, and he kind of blew this like ice horn, and when he blew the horn, the fucking mountainside, like lakeside, it turned black. The water did. And it was filled with screaming souls that sounded like crying cats, which that is such a horrible, like imagine, that sounds horrible. Also with another one that you said like Satan was there playing a red violin with them while the witches danced around them. What the fuck were these people smoking or having? Like, can I have some, please? Like, this sounds like a good time. However, we need to talk about the torture. So, one lady who I think is kind of a bad bitch icon, queen, girl boss. She basically refused to confess under torture. Like, she was literally like, she was burned with iron and sulfur, and still she denied everything, and then she just died, which I think is kind of like a boss move on her part, which again is deeply horrible and fuck men. And it's just like, they must have known that like these women are literally, they're just saying anything to, you know, stop the torture happening, because you just would. And they must know that. And it makes me think that these men were just like getting off on torturing women for shits and gigs, because men. It makes me really angry. It makes me hate men even more. Okay, now we're going to talk about one that, this is kind of well known in England, well, in the UK, should I say. I'm not entirely sure if it's known elsewhere, so if you're an American or you're from not here, please let me know if you've heard of this one before. But this is the Pendle witch trials, and I grew up hearing about this because I lived like around the vicinity. But the Pendle witch trials are kind of one of England's most infamous witch cases, because it's so well documented. And this is rare. And this is rare because we can literally see on paper how like this mass hysteria decimated a whole community. So the setting is in Pendle, which, if you don't know, is in Lancashire, 1612. And during that time, Lancashire is a bit of a shithole, still is, but you didn't hear me say that. It's a very deeply religious, it's very religious, and it's deeply divided on religion, because obviously you've got Catholicism, and you've got Protestant rule, and it's just a bit finicky. And obviously you have King James at the time, King James I, who was like super into demonology at the time, and he eventually became obsessed with witchcraft and believed Satan was actively working against him, which is bold to think that. So when accusations of witches started to come out of Pendle Hill, they took it so seriously. They were like, we ain't playing, we got this down. And the story kind of starts with a young woman called Alison Device, and while traveling through a countryside, she walks up to this man who is called John Law and asks him for some pins. And pins were they were used quite a lot in ceremonies like healing and things like that. So this might be why he didn't want to give it to her, but it's kind of unknown. And she claims the devil appeared in the likeness of a black dog with glowing eyes. And moments later, John Law dropped. And his symptoms basically kind of awe-stroked. Like, his face apparently went to one side, you know, he couldn't move. Like, bro had a stroke. But obviously back then they didn't know that. So Alison was kind of like, oh my god, I'm magic. And she kind of became convinced that she'd cursed him. And this kind of starts up this kind of, this is what the trial starts getting, well, not the trial, but this is where it starts kind of getting going, the witches and things like that. And the whole point of the Pendle witches is that it involves kind of two families, and you know, you have the Devices and the Chattocks family. They hated each other. They were kind of beefing. And this is where we kind of see how accusation becomes a weapon, and they just start using it every part of the family.
At the heart of this story are two families. They lived a short distance from each other, and their paths must have crossed on a regular basis. They were remarkably similar, both only just putting bread on the table, making a living out of begging or doing odd jobs for better-off neighbours. Both were headed by a matriarch, which was an unsettling concept for people in the 17th century. At the head of one family was Elizabeth Southerns, known as Old Demdike. By 1612, she was frail and blind. At the head of the second family was Anne Whittle, known as Old Chattocks. Old Chattocks, like Old Demdike, was a widow. She was probably in her 80s by 1612. Now, these two families had a long-held rivalry. Old Demdike and Old Chattocks must have known each other all their lives, probably probably been girls together, married, raised families, and were now in old age. But it was a mutual distrust bordering on hatred, a rivalry which was always there.
Eventually, Alison Device and her mother and brother, they are summoned to appear in court on the 30th of March 1612, and Alison confessed that she sold her soul to the devil, and she told him to kill John Law after he called her a thief. And her brother then basically said that Alison also confessed to him that she confessed to bewitching a local child. It was then Alison kind of decided to take the opportunity to kind of dob someone else in, and she saw this as an opportunity for revenge. And Alison then accused a lady called Anne Chatwicks of murdering 4 men by witchcraft, and also killing her father, which is crazy, who is called John Device, who died in 1601. And she claimed that this guy, John Device, went to her for protection, and because she was like frightened of her, and they agreed to give her £8 of oatmeal each year as a form of protection money. And this meal apparently was handed over annually until the year before John's death. And John claimed that his sickness had been caused by the Chattox family because they had not paid for their protection. But you can see how it was kind of just like he said, she said. It was just a bit of a kerfuffle. Like, people were confessing to selling the soul to the devil, people were apparently creating clay figures to curse each other, speaking with demonic animals. It was just kind of crazy, and whether or not these kind of confessions were true or, like, you know, forced by like fear and pressure is kind of impossible to know. But the thing is, like, the courts just accepted it at face value and was just like, yep, that's true. And one of the shocking turns of this trial is the 9-year-old daughter of the Device family, who was called Janet. She basically testified against her mother and her own brother. Like, this was a wig reveal. But yeah, she basically just like sat there and claimed that you know, they had familiars, they murdered people and attended satanic gatherings, and the judges just believed her. And this testimony helped condemn multiple people to death, with 10 people eventually executed. Whilst researching this, I found out that apparently a lady called Janet Device, the same name as the little girl, was eventually accused of witchcraft herself and kind of tried for it, although I don't exactly know if it's the same one, but that's interesting to know that it's like the same period and it's the same area. That's like karma. Okay, moving on to the last one we're going to talk about today. It's called the Roman trials. And if Pendle is anything to go by, because that was like very much local paranoia, Roman was kind of like organized terror, really. And yeah, so this began in 1613 in the city of Romand, which is in the Netherlands. And the city of Romand kind of experienced the largest witch trial in Dutch history, with 64 people executed. Most of them burnt alive, may I say. And what makes this interesting is how basically torture is what kind of transformed these like accusations into like a full-blown conspiracy. Like, you know, originally the accusations were like sick cattle, but like after they'd been tortured, it was kind of like a full-blown, like, people were just confessing to like literally impossible crimes. One woman claimed she murdered 41 children through magic, which is like, so this woman was, I'm gonna try the name, Trijningen van Zillard. So she was the first one to be kind of arrested for witchcraft, and along with her daughter, who apparently learnt witchcraft from her, obviously. That makes total sense. And the reason for this is apparently when she was playing with children, the little girl, not the mother, she kind of showed the children what she could do, and apparently she could like make things magically appear out of her mouth, like coins and shit. Which, okay. And then obviously that was enough to kind of arrest them. So the mother was then tortured. He admitted to killing many children, 41 children, and also 3 men, 7 women, and many different crops and animals. So she was just on a spree apparently. But then, here's the interesting thing, she then accused someone else. She accused a surgeon called Jan van Euler. She accused him of being a wizard. So not a witch, a wizard. And basically the mother was burnt alive, she was burnt at the stake, and then the daughter was basically sent to a insane asylum for the rest of her days. But going back to the wizard guy, so he was basically arrested with 10 other witches, and he admitted to trying to get his wife to make a pact with the devil, in which she kind of said no, and then he was like paranoid that she was going to go tell on him, so he basically murdered her and threw her body parts down a well and told everyone she ran away. And apparently he also admitted that he did eventually make a deal with the devil, and then the devil forced him to kill 1 patient with magic for every 10 he healed. And during his torture, he accused another 41 people of being witches, and he was burnt alive, obviously. Then those 41 people were also taken into custody, and they also admitted to having killed and like crippled and diseased people, who also apparently said the devil made them do it. And it got to the point where like the numbers would just kept going up. People were just accusing everyone, and the authorities were just like, yeah, they just accepted the proof and just kind of came up in their own ideas that there was this whole satanic conspiracy. It was kind of like the satanic panic in the 80s. It was very that. And the trials just basically spiraled because every confession produced more suspects. And because witchcraft was already seen as a secret organized cult, the authorities basically interpreted like every accusation as part of a larger conspiracy, and the excuses were just constant. It said that at one point 2 people were burned every day. Today it's very easy to dismiss witch trials as like ancient superstition and kind of look at it as being silly, but I think the terrifying part isn't that it's like the belief in witches, but it's kind of how quickly communities can be destroyed by fear. And like once that fear kind of takes hold, facts do not matter. And they accused always the other in society. It was always women, it was always the old, it was always the outcasts or the healers. It was always people that were different enough to become a target. And history shows you that when fear is combined with authority, ordinary people can justify almost anything. And this is why the witch trials still matter. Not because witches are real, but because mass hysteria is, and history has proven that it never fully disappears. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making it. It was really interesting to read about these trials that people don't necessarily hear of. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please comment below what your favorite witch trial is, which feels very weird to say, or comment a witch trial that you think people might not have heard of, because it'd be interesting to read upon. If you made it to the end of this video, please comment a little yarn ball, and then I can be like, thank you, you are a legend. But yeah, let me know what topic you want me to cover next. I did put a poll on the community tab, and also if you don't know, there is a community tab, and if you want, you can literally post whatever you want in there. Obviously don't post like poll in there or anything like that. I don't want to get banned, but put your knitting projects in there, put whatever you're reading, put whatever you're watching. I don't care. It'd be fun to know that I have friends. But yeah, if you want to follow me on social media, that'd be great. I would absolutely love to see if people are watching my videos. So if you want, tag me. That'd be cool. And yeah, you can also buy me a coffee if you're feeling generous to kind of support this kind of journey on my YouTube-ness. That didn't make fucking sense. But yeah, I'm really warm now because I got candles everywhere and I'm sweating my tits off, so I'm gonna go now. So goodbye. Love you.